Hello again, this is Guy Clapperton welcoming you back to the Near Futurist podcast. I've been to many conferences where there's someone called a futurist who tells us all about what's likely to happen in 50 years' time. I see my job as to talk about what's going to affect us and what is actionable right now. Something that's happened during my lifetime is I've gone from reading actual maps to increased reliance on my phone. We'll be talking about the next development in that area in just a second, but first, the usual plug for my media training service. Do you or your clients want to sound as confident, clear, and fluent in media interviews as the people in this podcast? Of course you do. My team and I can help. Drop my assistant Lindsay, that's lindsay@clapperton.co.uk, a note, and she'll set us a time for an initial chat. Or go to the website at clapperton.co.uk, two P's, to find out more. Now, back to the podcast. Okay, you can come back now. Now, as long as I can remember in the world of electronic automated maps, the company my guest for the next couple of episodes works for has been very much the market leader. Anybody who's known me for any length of time and attended my media training sessions will know that's not a term I use lightly. But it gets a bit self-defeating, and there's no reason to upgrade if it all just works behind the scenes to power our smart vehicles, cities and fleets. So where do you go from there? Now, to answer that is the Global Business Development Manager for Traffic at TomTom. His name is Douglas Gilmore. Douglas, welcome.
Thank you very much, Guy. Nice to meet you, and great to talk to your readership or listenership.
Great stuff. Leadership's another thing entirely. I'm self-employed. Listenership, that's great. Douglas, you've obviously done a great job on branding at TomTom. It's really synonymous with SatNav. Many people just think you connect cars with routes that'll be useful to them, which of course you do. But what more does the business offer now?
So that's right. In your introduction, you mentioned us as a leading provider of satellite navigation services and synonymous with the sat-nav on the dashboard. But TomTom today is a much larger business serving both the automotive and enterprise sectors with the sat-nav unbundled. So we've taken that sat-nav and split out the various parts and components, the maps, the traffic, the routing, the services that inform you of safety cameras. And we now supply that into various companies and businesses who use it for everything from fleet management, delivery, through to ride hailing. And that's a fairly new development as well, of course, in the last 20 years. So.
Okay, we all take mapping data for granted, of course. So I'm just wondering how it's used behind the scenes to power our everyday lives.
Yeah, so I mentioned things like on-demand fleet delivery. Many people think of a map, as you say, as a paper map, something that they have to first of all locate themselves and then locate their destination and find a route between them. Well, digital maps basically opens up a whole new world where you can not only provide user-centric mapping that you look on your phone for. You know your location. You don't have to find your location, as you might have to on a Scottish mountainside. You don't have to work it out where you are. The phone tells you where you are, and you can also, of course, search for a destination and then automatically, almost instantaneously, generate a route to that location. So. The exciting thing about digital maps is that as you can do on your phone as an individual, you can also, businesses want to do this for many thousands of vehicles, for many thousands of deliveries in one day, in 1 hour, globally. And that has massively improved the efficiency of their operations, reduce the cost of vehicle travel and vehicle miles that are needed to deliver those packages or to pick up and deliver people to their destinations. So we're all about helping people reach their destination on time, within less time, safely and efficiently.
And of course, people can track each other and those items on their maps. I'm sure we've all had put mail order in, or sorry, mail order. How old am I? We've all put orders in for items to be delivered online, or we've put in orders for groceries even, and have been able to watch them approaching our houses minute by minute.
Yeah.
So, what sort of products and apps are we looking at that are going to change the way we work in the next few years? I imagine the content of the maps themselves will have to evolve as well.
Yeah, that's right. So TomTom has invested very heavily over the last few years in building the largest, most interoperable, most comprehensive map with the help of far more contributors than ever before, and than was ever possible before. And that uses something called OpenStreetMap, OSM, and roughly 60,000 contributors to OSM globally. And it takes that content and we TomTom curates it, quality assures it, makes it routable, clears out vandalism or potential vandalism, and we of course then have additional proprietary data to supply with that map. So the future of our products is really about building ever richer, more detailed content with greater coverage, and the use of OSM in our maps has really enabled that. We've gone from about 150 maps to 150 countries covered in our maps to around 235 or so, and boosted the number of address points or delivery points that are in the map, boosted the range of search addresses and locations that you can find in that digital map. And in terms of applications of that coming down the line, or applications of digital maps and this content, two things really. One is autonomous driving, enabling automotive manufacturers to provide ever more independent autonomous vehicles, building and using that content in clever ways, but also AI in the world of enterprise, being able to query data, query spatial data, both static, unchanging things, as well as dynamic content, and querying that in a clever way to answer questions. And we see huge potential for government in particular to be able to, the government and the public sector, to be able to ask questions of spatial data around road safety, around not only how can they manage their own fleets better, but how could we change the infrastructure that we all rely on every day to improve the lives of citizens and drivers.
So this involves working with people like local governments, I assume. Well, tell me about some of your works with city planners.
Yeah, so we rarely actually work directly with city governments and planners. We work through a whole range of partners providing services to them. And those services range from transport planning, transport modelling and appraisal, investment decision making. And these are tools that take spatial data, like a road network. They take historic speeds and movement data that we observe from GPS-equipped devices, and they combine those two to provide a picture of the now, and then use it to predict the future and to cost and evaluate the costs and benefits of investment. In terms of cities, city planners or urban planners, they want to perhaps plan new housing and understand the level of background traffic when assessing whether to approve a retail site or a new location for a cinema, whatever it might be. Cinema, how old does that make me sound?
They still exist.
It still exists, but yeah. Both urban and transport planners use our data in a range of ways to improve the understanding of how cities operate. And this is not just in the UK. This is globally. We see, huge interest in this market. Market's worth about 130 billion billion pounds a year in the UK, are expected to by 2030.
That's obviously a lot. There are nonetheless some people who get quite cynical about city planners, governments, and mapping data. They worry it's all a bit big brotherish and that their vehicles are being watched. I'm assuming you would disagree with that. So tell me why people shouldn't worry about that.
So I think the biggest concern around privacy and data protection is not related to how someone like TomTom collects and uses data. So we anonymize and aggregate and map match data, so it cannot be, no individual can be re-identified in the data. No individual can be tracked in any way with our products and services. I think probably from a individual perspective, the bigger concern would be the large smartphone manufacturers and service providers, some of whom are competitors, obviously, to us. But yeah, they put in lots of security layers to avoid that, whether it's encryption or end-to-end protection of locations. But if that was ever broken, then indeed it would damage trust almost irreparably, I think, in such technologies. So
Sure.
everyone's very wary in the spatial and geospatial market.
Yeah, I think anonymization of data is absolutely crucial. And of course, what you're far too professional to say, so don't comment on what I'm about to say, is that people will complain or worry about all this sort of data, and yet they will carry the biggest data magnet in their pockets, meaning their phone, the whole
Absolutely.
time, which just sucks up everything including what I had for my last takeaway. And we don't seem to worry about that. So, leaving that to one side, where do we go from the position we're in now? I mean, for example, how can city planners use maps to improve, say, the flow of movement around cities?
So every year, TomTom publishes something called the Traffic Index, and it pulls together data from the entire last year. So the latest version, released in January 2025, looks at 2024 traffic levels in cities, in 500 cities around the world. And that data gives us kind of a snapshot of how cities are performing in terms of infrastructure investment, in terms of infrastructure management and operation of the network. It is just one part of the picture. Obviously, cities, have public transit. They have often, large metro systems, underground systems, as well as the road network. But our data provides a snapshot of how those cities are performing, whether roads are traveling more slowly, whether vehicles are traveling more slowly on the roads, how congested these roads are, how long people spend in traffic. So in the UK, for example, we saw London, Liverpool, Edinburgh topping the table of the slowest city in the UK. In terms of congestion levels, slightly different list of cities. It was Hull and Belfast and London, of course, topping that table. So that's one view. We also provide tools for cities through partners as well as directly. We do provide tools to enable them to understand the performance of specific roads, to understand who drives on roads, where they come from and are going to, subject to anonymization, of course. And yeah, we help cities manage live traffic conditions and the entire road network operators to manage conditions. People like National Highways in UK, and also some cities and countries around the world. That's just about monitoring and understanding where there are incidents, where there's delay that they may not be aware of, and there may be no other way of understanding where those things are happening. There are no sensors necessarily in the road, no hardware to detect these events, and so that's where GPS collected data really comes into its own in planning and in operations, because we have a view, an anonymized, aggregated view of everything that's going on in the road network, and why it's different from yesterday or different from 5 minutes ago.
Okay, there we're going to have to leave it for the moment because we've run out of time. In the next episode, I'll be asking Douglas what the Overture Foundation is and how open mapping data will underpin increasingly smart maps in future. But for the moment, Douglas Gilmore of TomTom, thank you very much. And the next episode will be along next week. Don't forget to check the website at nearfuturist.net to see how you can get my voice working at your conference. Meanwhile, see you next week.